Daddy moved to Jamestown in 1921, and I was born in 25, and Kitten was born in 27. Before Daddy bought the property where the house was, we lived in the Frog Apartments across the street. And I know that because I have a picture of me in a wicker rocking chair that he bought for me in Nashville when he was down there buying for the store. And the next picture I have is across the street where he built the house, and in front of it, the unfinished flagstone walk going into the house, there were a group of children. Jessie Ray was there first, and she was about 2 years old, and I was standing next to her, I believe, and I was about 4. And then Charlene Smith, Uncle Dylan and Aunt Razzie's daughter, was next to her, and she was born in 22, and she was about 6 years old. She was the oldest one of us. And then Faye Reynolds Qualls, Uncle Clarence and Aunt Carrie's son, was about 5 years old, and we're all standing on that unfinished sidewalk going into our to the house Daddy was building. And he added to that property some, but oh, I marvel at the way he was so meticulous, and Mother too, about how they laid out the property. It had flagstone walks and hedges between the garden that Mother had. She had a big garden, vegetable garden, and a grape arbor, and they had a orchard next, and then the house. And the house was built into a hill, so we had a basement that you could walk right out of, and we had a fish pond, a little fish pool, square fish pool, with a fountain that was built in the middle that was square. And I remember when Kitten and I were little, we'd go down on Wolf River and pick up these shiny rocks, and the little ones Daddy used to build the fountain up, and then the bigger ones were decorative around the edge of that fish pond pool. And Mother had trellis, this huge trellis on one end that had climbing roses all over it, and her flower beds. And then between the vegetable garden and the end of that, there was another trellis with seats on either side, and that just led right into the garden, the vegetable garden. And she had 6 varieties of grapes growing there, and a strawberry patch underneath it. And I remember Daddy sending somebody over to dig her an asparagus bed, and he muttered the whole time he was there because Mother had him dig it 3 feet deep. He saw no reason for that, but and the hedges between it then. And then Kitten and I had a little plot of ground up at the top where we had our 4-H club projects. You had to have a project if you got to go to summer camp. So we had a little vegetable garden, and Daddy had it dug up, and then we'd plant some seeds, and underneath it was our pet cemetery. And it was an idyllic place. But I remember too, Daddy always got expert help. When he did anything like that, we would have a landscape man come and lay out property correctly. And he also added to the property. Mr. Clark had a photographic studio which would have right on between Daddy's property and our right store. There was this pretty good sized piece of property with his photo studio there, and Daddy bought that. And then there was another little wedge of property that went kind of over the creek that came from the Mark Twain Springs, ran all the way through there and back on our property. And there was a house there. I don't know who owned that property, but Williams or Cravens might be the one. Daddy had all that turned into our property, and big magnolia tree there, and he went down on the river and brought back big boulders to bury into the side of the creek for natural seating area, and then built this stone bridge across that little creek. It's absolutely beautiful. And Mother had a tulip patch that ran the whole length of the fence that was by the road, and people used to drive to see her tulips when they bloom in the spring. And Garden Club came up from Livingston one time just to see them, I remember. But anyway, it was a wonderful place to live, and we had just a wonderful Mother and Daddy, and I just marvel at how advanced their thinking was and how meticulous everything was. We all know that Daddy was organized and very particular on everything he did. I just wonder where that came from. I just marvel at it, thinking back now with all he achieved when he was a little 6-year-old orphan with nobody to help him.